The heaviest rains in decades have triggered an unprecedented catastrophe across China. In a matter of days, vast urban and rural areas were submerged underwater. What began as intense rainfall quickly escalated into a nationwide emergency. The cities of Nanjing, Chongqing, Guangxi, Guilin, Chengdu, and Tianjin were especially impacted by severe flooding and landslides, exposing the country's vulnerability to extreme weather events fueled by climate change and unchecked urban development. In Nanjing, the historic city saw a complete collapse of its drainage systems. Traffic-packed streets turned into raging rivers, forcing drivers to abandon their vehicles in the middle of the road. Residential neighborhoods were suddenly inundated in the early hours of the morning, trapping families off guard. Apartment buildings had their lower floors completely flooded, leading to massive material losses, including furniture, appliances, and personal belongings. Downtown Nanjing shops and restaurants weren't spared either. Businesses were devastated within minutes. Floodwaters left behind mud, debris, and widespread destruction. Authorities sounded emergency alarms as rescue boats attempted to navigate narrow streets. Power outages struck several districts, halting elevators and vital services in high-rise buildings. As a precautionary measure, schools, government offices, and transport hubs were shut down. Meanwhile, in Chongqing, one of China's largest cities, built on mountainous terrain, disaster unfolded on a parallel scale. Torrential rains triggered landslides in the outskirts and overwhelmed canals throughout the city. In the downtown area, powerful currents swept away cars and tore down concrete barriers. Bridges over the Yangtze River were temporarily closed due to fears of collapse from the water's force. Emergency teams deployed sandbags and mobile pumps to mitigate damage. Public transport in Chongqing came to a halt, and train stations were packed with stranded passengers seeking shelter. Underground parking lots and shopping centers were completely flooded. However, thanks to swift coordination between rescue teams in both cities, no casualties were reported. Community centers were converted into makeshift shelters, offering hot meals, blankets, and basic medical care. While disaster gripped the east and central regions of China, the southern province of Guangxi faced its own escalating emergency. Days of continuous rainfall caused major rivers such as the Yujiang and Hongshui to overflow, surpassing historic record levels. Authorities declared red alerts in several counties and initiated mass evacuations. Entire neighborhoods, farmland, and grazing areas were swallowed by the rising waters. Some rural areas were completely cut off from the outside world. Transportation networks were paralyzed, and many bridges were destroyed. Airports remained operational, but under strict safety protocols. Special attention was given to dams and reservoirs, with engineers monitoring their structural integrity around the clock. In the picturesque city of Guilin, Floodwaters engulfed central streets and tourist sites. Basements, underground garages, and water systems collapsed. The city's infrastructure suffered serious damage. Emergency crews worked non-stop with pumps and generators to drain water from inundated zones. Some districts have already reported interruptions in the potable water supply as rescue and evacuation efforts continue. The situation in Chengdu, located in western China, was equally alarming. Sudden downpours turned familiar streets into violent streams. Residents watched in disbelief as vehicles floated through neighborhoods like toys in a stream. Historic alleyways were completely submerged, threatening centuries-old buildings. Metro stations and underground malls were flooded within minutes, trapping commuters and workers inside. Sirens echoed across Chengdu as authorities scrambled to drain the water and prevent collapses of critical infrastructure. Several key transport routes were shut down due to structural concerns. Crews worked around the clock to restore communications and remove floodwater from essential facilities. Meanwhile, in the northeastern part of the country, the coastal metropolis of Tianjin was plunged into its own flood nightmare. In Tianjin, the overflowing Hai River inundated both residential and industrial areas. Port operations came to a standstill as shipyards and warehouses filled with water and silt. In many neighborhoods, floodwaters reached chest height, prompting dramatic rooftop rescues by helicopter. Power outages severely hampered emergency coordination efforts. Schools were closed indefinitely and turned into temporary shelters for displaced families. In some districts, rainwater mixed with industrial runoff, raising concerns about chemical contamination and public health hazards. The combination of prolonged rainfall and poor urban planning made the situation even worse. Viral videos showing the raw power of the floods drew international attention. Environmentalists and scientists agree that these events are a direct consequence of climate change and the lack of urban resilience. Across the country, volunteers, NGOs, and the Chinese military mobilized. They distributed food, medicine, and warm clothing in shelters while also providing psychological support to survivors. River monitoring sensors were installed, and vulnerable infrastructure was reinforced. Authorities temporarily banned fishing and collected water samples to test for contamination. Industrial runoff was detected in several affected areas. In impacted regions, schools shifted to remote learning and students were provided with tablets. Agronomists began measuring soil saturation and estimating losses in crops and livestock. The Ministry of Water Resources maintained constant monitoring, and real-time weather updates were issued through mobile apps. Families displaced by the floods found shelter in hotels, offering discounted rates. As the rain began to subside, cleanup crews faced a new crisis: tons of mud, debris, and collapsed structures. The government announced compensation programs and recovery funds, though many fear full restoration could take years. Despite everything, hope remains. Neighborly solidarity, volunteer assistance, and rapid emergency response brought some peace amid the chaos. The emotional toll has been profound. Many families lost their homes, memories, and livelihoods. Yet, residents have shown remarkable determination to rebuild. These floods, though devastating, have exposed the urgent need to rethink infrastructure, urban planning, and disaster preparedness in China.